Okay. Hi, everyone.
Hey.
So, today we're going to get into some real things, but before that, if you are friends with either one of us on social media, you know we have thoughts on Harry and Meghan. Okay? We have differing thoughts. I'm gonna let y'all know right now. We have radically different positions on this issue. But why? Because Black is not a monolith. Okay. So, um, Lucy, share your thoughts with the audience.
Okay, so I definitely fundamentally I'm on the outside of the major talking points because I just think there's a way in which I think when we think about black folks who have white parents, we have to listen carefully to how they describe themselves because I think there's a political difference between people who describe themselves as biracial, people who identify as black mixed race or just mixed race. Those are different political things, and I just feel as if there's a way in which I've seen Meghan has no problem talking about herself as being a person of color, but there's a way in which I feel as if she's low key in how I've experienced and the things I've read and how she talks about herself, kind of distancing herself from blackness, which is fine. That's her right. And I think it's interesting. This is why I love black women. So many black women, so many black people have come out and got information for her, and it's just like, but I'm not really sure that little mama wants to sit with us. So I'm really interested in the politics of that. Number one. Number two, I think it's supremely anti-black to marry into a monarchy, like the monarchy folks. And so I'm not expecting Meghan Markle to actually, I don't know what I'm expecting. So I'm expecting, to me, it's just like, it's just already anti-black to marry into colonialism, which is why I never saw her marrying into that family as representation, because I don't want to be represented on a plantation of that size and that magnitude and that grandeur. And I think it's really interesting that this person entered into a plantation, was okay with some level of anti-blackness until the anti-blackness was got directed at her in a very specific kind of way, and her child, her progeny, and the fact that this child, before this child even got here, was going to be stripped of their birthright because of the one drop rule. And I think there's a lot of things to be gleaned from this situation, but to me it's just like this obsession with monarchy and celebrityism was like a little gross to watch this week. And I saw two people who not really understanding the depths of white supremacy and trying to act like love will conquer all. A love that does not take seriously white supremacy, anti-blackness, anti-indigeneity, colonialism is a love that will be a victim to those very systems and structures of oppression. And so I just found their naivete to be dangerous for people who married and reproduced and who are continuing to reproduce. So I found that really dangerous. It sounds to me like Meghan Markle needs a social justice doula. Um, and I also find it interesting that she lived 7 years in Canada. They chose not to settle in Canada. They came to the United States, which pretty much fortifies the fact that I'm right, that Canada is not a racial utopia, because guess what? They chose not to settle there. And for any of you who've ever heard me lament about Canada, I'm telling you, Canada is not that girl. The UK is not that girl. And I've had Black people who are from Canada and from the UK, and white people who are from Canada, from the UK, try to tell me how the US is like, we're barbaric, we're ridiculous, we're backwards, and how these places are way much different and farther behind and don't have those racial problems. Meghan and Harry have truly put in squarely into light that ain't the fact. That's not the case. So that's me. My whole thing is like, the major problem of this Meghan and Harry situation is we got to abolish heteropatriarchy and heterosupremacy. I found it ridiculous that a grown woman who's almost 40, who's already been married, gave up her passport, her driver's license, and everything else to marry this man. Like, to me, it just sounds like you gave up your sovereignty for what exactly? I don't understand this. And so maybe I've been a feminist for too long, but to me, it's just like, what would it look like for women to have a radical gender liberation analysis and they did not make themselves available to these men and to these families that are literally using them to reproduce heirs and then killing them in the process as they're reproducing heirs? This don't make no sense. Like, the monarchy hates women, period. Don't matter your race. And then when you add that extra stuff, it becomes even more untenable. So to me, it's just like, I don't know. I watched whatever. I was just sad, profoundly sad for everyone involved. And yeah, go ahead.
I'll let you air it all out. So, I mean, and I think I always have this tension, right? Of like, I passively consume things. Is why I love reality TV. I have a distance and I like constantly check myself that like, this isn't real life, right? Like that I don't have an expectation of celebrity that, or I have this tension about like my expectations about celebrity. So I can't say that I don't expect anything from celebrity, because I do. So that would be a lie. But I constantly check myself that like, celebrity is not like, they are human beings, but they are facing unique challenges and are operating in a world that is devoid of the nuance and the like space and the power dynamic that an average person would be. So like, for me, I think of Meghan Markle. So, and I will say, I've been a Meghan Markle fan like since forever. I used to be a subscriber to the TIG. Like before Meghan Markle was a thing, I was a stan. That said, I think that there are like a couple of things to unpack. So one being that she is a biracial woman raised by her Black mother, was estranged from her white father, had no relationship with her white siblings. And as soon as she dated Harry, all of a sudden they come, like, it was her white family. You have not heard anything about her family in Crenshaw. Not like, you haven't heard her mom say anything. You haven't heard her cousins and her, like, none of them have said anything. And I think even, and like, this was made clear of like, she started dating Harry, her half sister, who she hasn't seen since she was like 8, reverted back from her married name to her birth name to be able to engage with the media and talk about Meghan. Like, I think, so there's a racial dynamic there within her own family as a biracial woman. I do fundamentally believe there is a different level of social consciousness and awareness and like there's a joke that's like, you know what biracial person has a Black mom or not, because it's very different to be confused about who you are having a Black mother than having a white mother. Just saying, that could be a whole episode in and of itself, but it is a different socialization. Not to say that means you're going to be Sister Soldier, that you're going to be a radical Black feminist. Like, I'm not saying that like, just because you have a darker skinned, dreaded, like, social worker mom, that you're going to have, you know, Audre Lorde is your bestie, right? Like, we're not going to say that, but I think that is where my tension of like my expectation of her, or like my understanding of her, my viewing of her is that is what I impose on her, right? Of my assumptions as somebody who was raised by her Black mother and estranged from her white family, and seeing her white family literally profit off of and traffic in anti-Blackness and uphold white supremacy, as they are still doing right now, as this is popping off. Then you add into, like, I agree. Anybody who marries into the literal originator of white supremacy and the original, you know what I looked up? Like, there was a thing about the word race was created by the British. It did not exist. We talk about how race is not a real thing. It's a social construct. It was created by the British, right? White supremacy was literally created by the British. The Commonwealth is founded on white supremacy. So I that's why I also think that like my hopes of like somebody being woke who's marrying into the white to the royal family, like, doesn't exist. Like, I'm not thinking you got an analysis and you got the range, because you're marrying into literal white supremacy, like the epitome of white supremacy. Okay, so I'm like, okay, girl, do you? I love a good a good romance novel. I love a good prince story. I love a good, I also like am a child of the 80s and 90s, where I grew up with Diana and all of that stuff. I already had feelings about the royal family.
Hello. Okay, so let's stop there. My major problem is those white people ate and cannibalized a thin, blonde hair, blue-eyed woman who was beloved by everyone. Y'all, Google exists. Books exist, footnotes exist.
People like to be unicorns. That's the thing.
Oh, love conquers all. My bad. Okay, so she's a unicorn and love conquers all. Okay.
And this is where it is very clear it was a rude awakening. Also, I want to say
but what an awakening, though, Christina. What a way to be
awakened. It's
you
an
have to leave.
Literally shook up her whole identity.
You had to leave your country, go across the pond to be ate up, dragged by everybody and their mama, and literally be offered up to danger, because you're being told neither your husband nor your child will be secure. You tell the people you are mentally unraveling, they're like, sorry, that's above me, can't do anything.
While pregnant.
What an awakening.
Is that literally, do you know, like, to have suicidal ideation as a pregnant person, like, to actually be plotting to harm yourself as a pregnant person is a level that, like, I can't get over. Like, out of everything, literally out of everything, that is what I'm like, this is evil. Like, it's actually evil. And then I have to think to myself, do I expect anything better? No, I don't. So, like, I think that like, I feel a lot of empathy for them. I think that it is a great teachable moment in terms of
okay.
I think it's a great teachable moment in terms of, like, colonial structures, in terms of people thinking that, interracial marriage is the way to solve racism, in a way that we think that it's a great way to address colorism. It's like, I think that the thing about pop culture that I love is that we get to, people are going to have strong opinions, but we actually get to learn from it. Like, we can choose to learn from it without having to lionize people. Like, I don't see them as superhuman. I don't worship at the altar of the monarchy, like some of y'all out here really going hard in my comments about, like,
hard
Meghan Trump. Like, I'm like, I really don't care that much. Like, it really
Meghan is what?
Donald Trump. Literally.
I'm sorry, what?
I'm like, how do you even compare the two? One, literally, like I just
never mind. Got it.
But, like, the level of vitriol and hatred for this woman, I'm sorry, like, I told you, like I told you with the whole, like, Kamala Harris thing, what I told you about, like, the whole, like, even like Candace Owens, I am going to always have a level of empathy for Black women's humanity, no matter how they're fucking up. Like, I just, because you people are out of control, like, out of control.
Out of control.
You had Piers Morgan literally lose his damn mind and his job on international television. Why? Because you tried to date Meghan and she rejected you. And so you literally
that's what it was.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. His co-host said that to him on air.
Oh, I thought you said he was trying to be friends with him.
No,
with her.
They went on a date. One.
Patriarchy. You see? Do you see the levels of patriarchy in this one story? Do you the father's patriarchy? Piers Morgan's patriarchy, the patriarchy of that pedophile who's in the family. It's just like, do you see how all of these like these super villain patriarchal come together and render this woman and her child and her husband, like, just try to feed them to the lions? That's why we gotta abolish the patriarchy, people.
and the monarchy. But hey, that's just me.
No,
Also,
One,
I will
one,
say,
oh, okay. I'm glad that you said that.
like, I'm clear.
Okay, Megan and Harry are trying to like, okay,
They're trying
like
to like they're trying
the
to
whole
make
Black Lives
their
Matter.
way.
They're trying to rebrand. Fam, you are part of the monarchy. Literally, in order for Black lives to matter globally, you have to let go of them commonwealths, and the monarchy gotta go. It has to be abolished. We cannot repair. We cannot. Literally, it has to be abolished. So it's just like, I don't think these people understand the words that are actually coming out of their mouth.
But here's the thing. I think that they do. You have to also understand, like we were saying about what they did to Diana, right? I think they were bobbing and weaving in terms of how much they're going to give, how much they're going to say before they get killed. Okay.
It's very clear. It's very clear that the level of deliberation, you could tell, like Megan breathed every single time before she answered. Like she would make sure that I'm not on autopilot.
These people clearly don't care if she lives or dies. Like they already showed her that. The fact that like the fact that you had to leave Canada because the day that they're pulling your security, because they actually announced the day that would be their last day with security, people had their physical address. What do you think is going to happen when they already get death threats? Like,
and okay, and I want to add one more person onto the list of patriarchy: his brother,
his father, all of them. But especially, I am convinced that the institution is Charles.
Yeah,
I'm convinced.
I'm with you. I'm with you. And I think the institution is Charles and his mother. I think nothing.
No decision is going about.
I was about to say, I don't think exactly. I was about to say, I don't think you could buy socks without her signing off. Like, yeah, I know you got the socks, because she looks like she is very. She got her wits about her, and her tentacles are in everything. I really think the institution is Charles first, and then he's the cover, and she's really the institution.
And okay, so one last point before we shift is I do want to talk about what stood out for me. So I remember I'm saying that like I always unpack the lessons and the points, is the fact that you have, this is where I'm also like, I push back on the like, Megan doesn't consider herself Black. She's just being opportunistic about Black Lives Matter, all of these things. How you have, I'm sorry, who does Serena Williams ever stick her neck out for? What, like, when does that happen? And I mean, there's a class analysis. There's a class analysis, but let me tell you that Black elite, you have Tyler Perry, you have Oprah Winfrey, and you have Serena Williams galvanizing their social and economic power to protect them, is also a whole other masterclass that we could talk about in terms of like,
and Tyler Perry and Oprah, like, we're not talking about people who have a strong analysis on anti-Blackness either. So I think I see rich elite Black people showing up for their girl. And I think what I think is happening, I think now, this is what I think is actually happening to Megan. I think Megan is having a racial awakening now at almost 40. A thing that most Black people go through either in middle school, high school, college. I think
not if you're biracial. I would argue that you like not all. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm saying that like for folks who have light skin privilege, for folks who are biracial, multiracial, it is a long. What I have witnessed is it is a long, slow journey of racial awakening. That's just the reality of being quote unquote ambiguous.
You're right. And you know
again, with the standard,
we will unpack that. I don't know if there's such a thing as racially ambiguous in a highly racialized world, because here's the thing: you're not being treated like you're Black, but you're not fully being treated like you're white. The world is responding to something. And I just think watching this almost 40-year-old woman come into her consciousness around Blackness and realizing like, oh, my phenotype, my light skinness was not enough to be accepted in a very specific kind of way. It's you could see the heartbreak in her eyes, in her face, in her measuredness, in her talking, because probably her whole life she's probably been fetishized, been treated much better than the yous and eyes of the world. But at the end of the day, it's just like she got niggerized in a very specific kind of way that she's probably never been niggerized and racialized violently in a very specific kind of way. And on top of you're a newlywed, on top of you're in a country that is not yours, and you're pregnant, like that is a lot
And you're
to
completely
deal with.
isolated. So the fact that like her
You
mother
have your
couldn't even be
passport
there,
or your driver's license.
but like you couldn't really even talk to your friends. You couldn't see your friends. You couldn't see your family. Shit, like in it. Like anyway, we could go on and about this.
Okay,
we're gonna move on.
Why are people giving up their sovereignty for marriage and children? Like, come on, fam.
That's a whole
come
other
on,
special
fam.
topic that we will return to.
Whatever, Christina. Whatever, Christina.
I'm like, listen, my job here is time check, and we have spent 30 minutes on Harry and Meghan. So, which we knew was a possibility. We could spend 3 hours on Harry and Meghan. Let me tell you.
Oh my goodness. Whatever.
This is what happens when you're social scientists, okay?
Yes. Passive watching where? Never.
I'm like, okay, we're gonna move to the main topic since we already spent 30 minutes on this. So today we are also talking about your like radical imagination and really how it intersects with power. So one of the things that Lucy said to me as we were preparing for this that really, really hit me was saying that like if we let white supremacy determine what is possible, we'll never be able to shape power in our image and get shit done. And I was like, that is the most succinct way of explain kind of like where we're at in this moment, right? So politically and socially, we are, in the peak of racial reckoning. We have shifted political power due to like electoral power. We have folks in decision-making authority in Congress, locally. We can't say at the state level because it's Florida, but other places in locally. At the state level. And what we're seeing, like this is my take on this, is the lack of imagination and the lack of to push boundaries and create something new, right? Like where's the radical imagination and then the follow through?
Right.
Like why are we negotiating with ourselves? And for me, that is a lack of imagination.
Yeah, for sure. And
what is possible?
Yeah, and I just think when the left, progressives, democratic socialists, moderates, whatever the terminology and phrase, wherever you fall on that spectrum, we are very good at having an analysis on power, but not really being able to think about seizing power and shaping power in our image. And this is something I talk a lot to people when I'm at work, when I'm coaching or whatever, because I think what's happening on the left is it's like people just have a really negative connotation of power because they're always thinking about power that is white, power that is male, power that is normative, power that is North American. And so because they can't divorce all of those social categories that they put onto power, because power is neither good nor bad. It's what you do with it. It doesn't have a gender. It doesn't belong to one group of people. Like it doesn't belong to in one area of the world. And I just think because people are so good at calling out male power, white power, this, that, or whatever, it's just like, what happens with, it's like, okay, what kind of power do you want to build? What kind of power do you, people power, right? But people were not practiced because our imagination has been capped by white supremacy, because you think what white people or certain kinds of white people do with power is all that there is to learn and know about power. And that's the part I find to be really dangerous. That's the part I find to be really we need a skill build and resource ourselves around, because I don't care what you're trying to do. We're not going to change anything in these United States. We're not going to get liberation or freedom for anyone if we cannot take the cap off our imagination, and if we cannot, so that we can see the forest for the trees.
Exactly. And I think that imagination, like you were saying, our imagination has been stamped out by white supremacy and capitalism, that like we are so focused in the present, we are so focused in unpacking the past, we're so focused in survival, we're so focused on responding, that we don't actually have the time, the space, the energy to breathe and imagine. And I think that is why I think imagination is a radical act. And I think that is liberation, that is freedom. Like actually having the space, the time, the energy to dream is super important. And it's not just, but for me, it is not just dreaming. It is, I think about it as like ideating and innovating to then make it possible. Because it's not, oh, I dream of a world without borders and like, but how is that really realistically going to happen? Like, how about, you know, like the free movement of people? That is something that is rooted in like reality, like not in reality, I shouldn't say reality, but like, I don't need people to come for me for that. But I think more rooted in innovation, rather than just in survival. We're so focused on responding that we don't actually have the time, the space, the energy to breathe and imagine. And I think that's why I think imagination is responding that we don't actually have the time, the space. I'm back.
Okay. the weather is hating on a sister. Just
I was
hating.
like, what is happening? And then you were frozen for me. Anyway,
yeah.
I forgot the last thing that I said. But
ideating and innovation is the last two things I heard.
Yes. So I don't know if you practice mindfulness or meditation, but it requires you to actually have details, right? So when you are going through a visualization practice, you have to engage all of your five senses. You have to imagine like how far is the sun out? What does it feel like on your skin? What are the sounds that are happening? What are you feeling on your skin? What are you like? Are you standing? Are you sitting? Are you what, you know, like, are the leaves green and yellow and the whole constellation of color? You need to actually, the details are important. And so when I think of radical imagination, I think of not just the big, bold vision, but actually all of the details and all of the little nitty gritty on how to make it happen.
Because guess what, boo? Freedom is in the details. Freedom is in the details, and freedom will belong to those who can see the details and like be in it. And so like, yes, these, again, today is the day that Harriet Tubman became a ancestor. This is someone who just, yes, the system said she was enslaved. Yes, the system said she was not free. But guess what? Harriet was not colluding with that. She did not link up herself and her body and her understanding of herself to that whatever. Y'all think I'm a slave. Y'all think I'm unfree. Actually, I'm very free. I'm so free, I'm gonna get free and get other people free. Why? Because Harriet Tubman dreamed a lot. Like, so she this is where she get her visions for the Underground Railroad. She knew which star to follow because she gave herself the time to ideate and to visualize. And it's in that visualization that she was able to make those trips very frequently by herself and with others to freedom. Therefore, if we are not practiced, if you don't know, like, if you don't know, like, what does a world without the gender binary look like? What does the world look like without toxic masculinity? Have you thought about what would it look like to raise free Black children that could be as loud and as obnoxious in public as everybody else's kids, because they don't have to be acting like stiff little adults. If we're not able to think about that now and start to, in some way, shape, or form, start to live it out now, what we gonna do when the material conditions do change? And sometimes I wonder, people who who call themselves progressives, anti-racist, leftists, democratic socialists, sometimes I wonder, do they actually believe a new world is possible?
No.
Because if you believe a new world is possible, right.
It's a clear no.
If you think a new world is possible, you got to be thinking about right now, well, what would you do when possibility comes?
Exactly. When possibility is here, are you ready? Do you have a plan? And I think what we're seeing is that folks don't have a plan. But
it's like no, we're not. It's like we have to ask ourselves this question: are you not on the right because they're not cool enough for you? Because the right believes the world they want is possible, and
they actualize it. And they actualize it.
But over here, do we think a new world is possible? And so it's just like, this is not, I don't know. It's just like, this is not a social club, y'all. We're like, for real, trying to interrupt infant mortality of Black children and Black women. We are for real trying to interrupt premature Black death. We are for real trying to create a world where no one is illegal. Like, those are like real material demands. We're for real about indigenous people getting their land back and their way of life back. We are for real about Black people getting reparations globally, making sure all empires pay what they owe everybody. These are not pie in the sky. As big and as lofty and as ridiculous as they sound, it's not pie in the sky. It's not pie in the sky. I'm working towards that. And I imagine that. I think of, I'm right now, I want to somatically feel into and practice transformative justice, because the world I'm going towards, where I'm not disposing of folks, so we got to find ways to intervene on conflict and harm. And so, yeah, child, I think it's sad that so many people are on this side per se, but I'm not really sure if they believe if a new thing is possible. Tell me more about that. How is that? How you over here making these,
big demands,
chewing people up, making these demands, chewing people up on social media level you can't engage your imagination because you think the world we got is the only world we have with some cosmetic changes. That's wild to me.
And I think of also, if I get, I don't know what's up with my internet, but you can keep talking if I freeze. I think that this is where radical change and transformation and liberation work requires rigor. And rigor is not just about wonky, nerdy things. It is about imagination. It is about play. It is about creativity. It is about innovation. And so it's not to say that, oh, well, I need to be a parliamentarian and know every parliamentary trick like the right, but it requires you to actually think deeply about the future with which you want to live in or that you want to leave behind.
Yeah.
And in that, which is why I love to do, when we do community forums or anything like that, I like to do a visualization exercise of what does it look like? What does it taste like? What does it smell like? What does it feel like? Who is there with you? Who's not here? Like actually it dig deeper, right? And so it's not just about I have this political ideology and I have these convictions and I like these words and I don't like the status quo. Actually, and I think it's a joyful practice. Like for me, it brings joy to imagine what is possible. And then in doing that, you get crisper on the obstacles to achieving it. You get to get crisper on the maneuvering that you need, the building blocks that you need to have in play to be able to have it to be there. And I think about, you know, we talk about the Haitian Revolution. That was a radical imagination.
Come on,
right?
somebody.
It's,
Come on.
It is number one, imagining, well, number one, knowing that you are inherently free. Number two, imagining that a different way is possible. Number three, imagining that you can rule yourselves. Number four, like actually developing a system of governance. That is imagination. Then you actually have, like I think about like decolonialization or post-colonialization of like, what does land rights look like post-colonial in a post-colonial period? That requires what? An imagination, right? You have to think of, actually, we don't want land to be locked by the few. We want it to be owned by everyone. So we have what? Agrarian laws, which have swept the world, right? Like that is a radical imagination. That is an exercise in imagination. And so I think that we get to play, we get to imagine, and we get to make it happen.
Yeah.
And also I think by exercising our imagination, we are not stuck like Lucy also hit me with a gem. She said, not remodel the master's house, but build a new house. Because when you don't have imagination, you are stuck to the confines of the system with which you are working in, and you are replicating, and this is what, I'm sorry, this is what white people's number one fear is, right? In terms of dismantling white supremacy. Like, oh, that means Black supremacy. Oh, that means whatever supremacy. They don't have the creativity and imagination for there to actually be a more equitable and liberated society. They think there has to be a racially based hierarchical structure that permeates everything. When in reality, what I'm imagining is not that at all. And
not
so
that at all.
When you don't have that imagination, what do? You replicate what you see by changing the person that's on top.
Ooh, child. And I see this all the time in nonprofits. The assumption, like, if I'm not working for white people and I come over here in this predominantly Black place, this predominantly POC space, but because no one did the job of imagining, like, well, what different kind of boss? Like, what other bosses can I be? Because a lot of us have the one boss. What are reproducing the very harm that they were victims of? Why? Because there's that no imagination, and also like people are not. You can change the actors at the top, but if the actors at the top don't have the consciousness, are not practiced in whatever, they're just going to reproduce the old thing. So be practiced, almost be well versed and skill built in thinking about like freedom now. So what does it look like to, yes, anti-Blackness is real. But if you have access, if you raise children or you have access to little ones, what does it look like to engage those Black children like the free, autonomous, sovereign beings that they are? So that they know, so that they know that's like and what that is. Because the danger here is we will win our big wins, and we will not know how to respond to it, that we will squander our win. When opportunity and possibility knocks on our door, because we're not accustomed to spending time with it, we won't recognize that possibility is there, and we won't be able to live into it and be into it. Like, this is a danger. This is a danger. This is a cancer. It's just like, remove this, extricate this from your body. I think a good example of imagination is the Biden tax credit right now. I think it's a really good, you could tell someone was ideating, someone was thinking like, well, what do people with small children actually need? What do they actually need in a pandemic? So that they don't continue to free fall into the abyss of poverty and never be able, because right now we're staring down a cliff where there is a group of young people that may never ever be able to come out of what happened to their families within the pandemic. We're talking about educationally speaking, developmentally speaking, economically speaking. And so for me, I don't know, like, I don't have a problem criticizing people when they're wrong, and I don't have a problem saying people when they're right. I have to say I am thoroughly impressed with Joe Biden and this child tax credit. And now my next question is, how can we dream bigger?
Well,
How
I
can we
think
dream bigger?
it's an exercise in what basic universal basic income.
Come on, somebody, because I'm queen of less. I
Yeah.
will not rest until we have universal basic income. Will not rest.
And so I think that this is an example of an experiment, right? And
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes. And I think it also it's so common sense that it's like not even radical. Like that's how I like that.
Not even radical. However, though, in this violent racial capitalist society, the thought of, because every major Western country does this already,
except for the United States.
Except for the United States. So to me, it's just like, but it's, which is why it's radical here. It's radical here because if the pandemic had a gender, its gender would be a woman. Why? Because in 1 year, the pandemic has undone all of the gains that women have made economically in the last 30 years, which means there are more children experiencing poverty right now. We must imagine a world where that cannot continue to be the norm. That cannot.
It also is that 3 million women, I think the number is more than that, have left the workforce.
Girl, and they never coming back.
And they're never coming back. We also have to imagine, what does work look like for women to be able to withstand a shock like a global pandemic and shutdown and still be able to be employed, right? So what does that mean for childcare? What does that mean for what the literal expectation of work and in labor laws, right? So I think that there have been folks calling for the radical transformation of work for a long time. I think that there have been folks that have been calling out the feminization of poverty for a very long time. We are just seeing a lot of the structural challenges that we have already had and that have been highlighted coming to bear because of this unusual circumstance that was completely mismanaged. And so I'm happy that the Recovery Act was officially passed today. There are a lot of really good policies that are in it. There is a critique about it not going far enough. But I think there are actually some really innovative things that are in the bill, and I'm looking forward to like unpacking that as well.
Yeah, we got to think the progressives who are engaging in their imagination, who pushing these kinds of things, like pushing us to think, not us, because we already think like this, pushing them folk, because I actually think this is, for the kind of moderate that Biden is, it's like, oh, you got a little bit of imagination, brother? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I ain't gonna give them too much, but yes. So yes, how do we dream bigger? How do we go deeper? That is just but one example. We need to be practicing these things inside of our relationships, our parenting, our aunting, our romantic relationships, everywhere you can, so that way when game time comes, we're able to like do the things and think about the things. So we got to engage the imagination. It's a prerequisite. It's a requirement to resistance, to liberation, to anti-racism, social justice, whatever the thing you call it. Like this is our work. It's first and foremost. Can you believe it? Can you be it?
And I think, I would love for people to think about like what the role of creative play has in your life.
Yes.
And in my life, like, this is why I love reading fiction. This is why I also love you know, like particularly science fiction, and like futurist fiction, because it, and I think also like that was like the magic of Black Panther, right? Like or just like Marvel universe altogether, like just a radically differently structured society. Well, I mean, I guess not all Marvel. I will go back to my Black Panther example. Radically differently structured society to help us like think of like, oh yeah, that was that, like a whole thing is possible. And I think that was actually a really great exercise in radical imagination, um and it inspired people to be
Mhm.
futurists, you know, to
Yes,
actually
yes.
imagine what would have happened if other points in history had gone differently, and also like what we can do differently um in the choices that we make moving forward, right? Because also a lot of imagination is about choice. Like I think about it as like gaming out choices. um are we going to uphold existing structures and reform it, or are we going to transform it, or are we going to build anew from scratch?
Okay. And so people watching be like, okay, yeah, all right, Christina, we see. How do I even start to begin to engage my imagination? What y'all talking about?
I think visualizations and meditation are the easy, like the baby step.
Baby steps. And I definitely would say play. Are you playing? Are you making time to play? Play with your dog, play with your kids, play video games. Um like really engaging in adult play, like coloring books, like
Mm-hmm.
how are you getting in touch with your childhood? And if you didn't have the kind of childhood where you got to play because you were always in survival mode, how do you give your little self now
Mm-hmm.
that time to play and to imagine? And
Mm-hmm.
like, so if you used to like to make clothes for your Barbie dolls, this, that, and the third, do that now. If you used to like to make plays and make your brothers and sisters read out the parts, do that now and get on Zoom and send everybody, here's your part, that like
Mm-hmm.
bossy that you as a kid now, and just um and have other people engage you in your imagination. Because like, yeah, after we read all the books, we watch all the documentaries, we have the really smart hot takes on pop culture, what else are we doing? What else are we doing? How else are we engaging our big beautiful brains? And so the one of the ways we engage our big beautiful brains, we visualize, we meditate, we take naps, we chill out, we take long walks, we go to the beach, we do those things. We literally play like kids.
Mm-hmm.
Go play freeze tag with your kids. Like, go hop on a bike, do something, let go of this. Like, don't take yourself too seriously. I don't take myself seriously. I do not. Like, I'm a serious person around my ideas and my politics, but I'm goofy. I love to laugh, I love to play. And I give myself permission to be that. And I don't think that takes away from the other more quote unquote adult serious aspects of myself. Because like, I'm really serious about leaving this planet as a free Black woman. And so I gotta do the things if I'm gonna do the things.
This is very true. And on that note,
Hey.
that concludes tonight's episode of
Child. Okay, now if you're watching this on replay, comment, share, like, and come be with us next week, boo.
See you then.